Thank you guys for being here. I am Luke Williams. I'm one of the ITAM instructors, along with a few other of us that are here. And I just want to introduce ITAM real quick. If you're not familiar with us, we're Information Technology Administrative Management. That's a mouthful. So we go by IT management. It makes it easier to say. And so we offer majors in everything from, I should say, specializations from cybersecurity, administrative management, project management, data innovation, and now retail technology management, which is really what we're here to talk about tonight. But for any specialization, hopefully this will be a value add. We have two of the greatest people, I think, on the planet, but definitely for retail management technology for our program here tonight to talk about how they are successful in what they do, representing a lot of great companies from Lululemon to Microsoft, REI, various background. I won't give everything away because they're going to tell you all that. But these folks, Carrie and Chris, are amazing. They're dedicated to ITAM, and they have amazing careers in great companies that I know all of us would love to be involved with and actually use on a daily basis for the most part. So we would love to. We're just excited to hear from you guys. So I will turn it over, unless anyone has anything else, I will turn it over to Chris and Carrie to go ahead and share a little bit maybe about just who you are from your perspective, and why you're here to help students today.
Sounds good. Carrie, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Larson. I have been on the advisory board for ITAM for, I think, about 3 years now. And I currently am the director of business operations for the technology organization at Lululemon. And so in that, I'm basically responsible for all the internal functions to run the technology org as efficiently and effectively as possible, and serve as the chief of staff for our CTO. And I've had a long retail career. Somehow it ended up that way, but I've worked at REI, Nordstrom, Starbucks, and Lululemon. So I've kind of hit the big Northwest retailers somehow throughout my career. But originally, my journey started, I was lucky enough to be in college and graduating during the tech boom, or the dot-com bubble, however you want to think about it. So I had a lot of people encouraging me along the way and pushing me towards a career in STEM in one way or another. And I waffled for a while between engineering and math, and eventually landed in computer information systems and graduated from Colorado State University with a degree in CIS. And moved out to the Pacific Northwest actually for a programming position at a local insurance company, Safeco, for those of you that remember them. Now they're Liberty Mutual, and worked there for a good eight years or so, and where I really kind of got my foundation and my feet under me before going off and starting a family. And then once I was ready to come back to work is when I kind of started my retail journey, and started at Starbucks, and then have moved along the way, and I've gotten actually an opportunity to work with Chris at two different retailers, both Nordstrom and REI. So we know each other in many different aspects. So I'll turn it over to him to introduce himself.
Cool. Thanks, Carrie. So my name is Chris Benz, and before I start, I'll say at Nordstrom, Carrie and I would always joke that we're not saving babies. So for those who are listening to this on the recording, glad you're on the recording. Sorry you couldn't be here in person, but no problem. So my name is Chris Benz. I've been on ITAM for 2 years now. I am a senior program manager at Microsoft. Some of you may wonder, well, does Microsoft have retail? And we do. So I support the global supply chain as well as consumer fulfillment for any of the Microsoft products that you use. So Surfaces, Xboxes, and everything in between. So I grew up in the Seattle area. In terms of my career, I first got my start at Nordstrom out of college. For college, I went to actually Eastern Washington University, so a little bit farther down the freeway. I graduated in communication studies and management information systems. And the reason why I chose that was because I knew I really enjoy technology, but I didn't enjoy coding, which may sound weird, but when you're looking at kind of the roles that Carrie and I have, the great thing is you get to interact with technology, but you're not coding every day. So started at Nordstrom and I actually graduated in 2009, 2010. So if you think about what happened there, that was actually during one of the economic crises, and so I knew I had to get thrifty and trying to find a job. So I actually started in the stock room at Nordstrom, knowing that if I had an employee number, that would help me get into a technology role there. So I did, and so supported the back of house systems at Nordstrom, and then after doing that for about 6 years, went over to REI to support their merchandising and back of house systems, and then had the opportunity to join Microsoft about a year and a half ago. So I've been doing that. So yep, about eight to 10 years in the career, and it's a lot of fun. I think the great thing about retail is it's always changing, as you can hear. So it's just fun to be in an environment. I think similar to Carrie, I didn't plan to have my career be in retail, but that's where, just if you think about the Seattle area, a lot of opportunity has been, and it's been a lot of fun. So that's me.
Great.
Awesome. Mary, do you have questions or do you want me to ask some more?
I am wildly sending out the new link to anybody I could think of that I spent the hours of sending these out to. So can you ask the next one why I send out all
Yes. So good. Thanks for the introduction, both Carrie and Chris. And so I think one thing that I know, and I don't want to speak for students, but I know that I get asked this a lot in my classes is, well, how do I get started into, from where I'm at now as a student? And you guys know our students. We have students from, already working in successful companies all the way to maybe people that are just coming out of high school. So it's a hard question to answer, but I guess, maybe tell us a little bit about how you got started or how you feel like a student could go from where they're at now into, sort of launching into the career path that you're in, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. I can go ahead and start. So I think in terms of how to start, I think, and this is, once again, there's not a science to it. So I think that's the first thing that I'll say. There's not a science to it. Just because you graduated college doesn't mean that the hard work is over in terms of finding opportunities. And so I think really for me, in terms of getting started, is while you're in at Central focusing on the fundamentals of technology, I think sometimes people get wrapped up on, do I need it? What coding language do I need to know how to do? Or how good of an Excel macro do I have to write? Really, if I think about getting started, it's how well can you convey to someone in an organization that the fundamentals of technology and why it's important and how it impacts the workplace, and just being able to then take that and leverage your experience that you've had in college. When I look at early in career, it's focusing on how quickly can you learn, how quickly can you work across multiple stakeholders. This is more for my type of roles versus computer science, to be clear, but really how can you show you understand fundamentals, and you're excited and willing to learn. When you look at retail, it's so fast paced, that's usually something they want to look at. And how can you start a role that is more fundamental in an organization just to learn as much as you can? Because the one thing I've learned is your first 2 to 3 years are so critical. So be focused less about a title and just be focused on what you can work on, because as you build that foundation of things that you can work on, that's how you accelerate your career later on.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Really finding companies that provide some of those more entry level opportunities, even if that means stepping into something that's not like directly in the field that you're interested in, but gets you in, perhaps with a company that aligns with your values or that you're interested in pursuing a career in. Being willing to take those steps, to get a foot in the door. And a lot of it, like, I didn't know any of this when I was graduating. When I graduated, I landed where I landed because I wanted to move out here. I am from Colorado and I wanted to move out here for other reasons. And I reached out to a professor of mine and I said, hey, where should I apply in Seattle that's not Microsoft? Because I didn't want to work. I was I had a technology degree, but I didn't want to go work at a technology company. I knew that wasn't me. But I was having a hard time kind of seeing the bigger picture. And luckily I had, amazing professors and one that helped connect me and get me an interview that ultimately landed my first job out of college. But now now that I look back and I know what I know now, I realize that the opportunities for technology, the opportunities in the retail industry, even in technology, are like boundless. And it's really about looking and looking at companies and seeking out companies that really align with your values, or that can get you excited, or that are doing something that you're passionate about. Because every company has technology and in some form or another. And I think retailers, especially right now with everything that we're going through in the world, are in desperate need of like fresh, innovative perspectives on how to look at the retail world and shopping behaviors. And so I think my recommendation is just to broaden your reach and really, don't narrow your search to around a specific company, really widen that net as much as you can, and think outside of the box, because your path will wind many different ways. So don't expect that you're going to land right where you want to be in your first step out.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that. So, I think sometimes there's when you're graduating college, you want to apply to Facebook, you want to apply to Microsoft, all the big ones. And really, kind of back to my opinion, when you first graduate, the one thing that someone can never take from you is experience. And so while it's great to be in a large company, as you're graduating college or starting a new career, there is times where that tech company down the street, that has 50 employees might give you more opportunity, because year 3 or 4, the conversation switches from where'd you go to college to what'd you work on. And really what's important is having examples of saying, I worked on this, and this, where, sometimes if you're in a large company, you may be in an operations role for 5 years or something like that. So yeah, to add on to that, it's not just the size of the company, but it's also ensuring that experience that you can get is good, because that is really what's going to separate you when you go to year 3 through 6 or 7.
So I'd like to hear from students here in just a minute, but I love this point that both of you are making, because I think this is something that we see a lot in just general. I see this, and I think I even had this mentality. It's like, kind of building on what you're saying here, sometimes we think like our first role out of college has to be like the home run, right? It has to be like what I want to do for the rest of my life. And if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, you guys are saying, hey, be willing maybe to take something that's not your ultimate dream, but the experience that you'll get from it will pivot you into something that's better, that's long-term. It gives you the right experience. It doesn't have to be the exactly perfect matched with your degree 100%, because probably nothing will. So am I in the ballpark? Is that kind of what you guys are saying?
Yeah, for sure. And like, really, like, how many people truly like know what they want to do coming out of college? Like, I don't know if I still like 100% know what I want to be when I grow up. So I think it's being open-minded and also knowing that, like, until you go out and get experience and work at different companies, you're not gonna, it's kind of like the whole like test driving different things. Like, you're not gonna really know what you enjoy or what you don't enjoy, or what companies you really align with until you go out and start trying some out. You may aspire to someday work at a Facebook or a company like that, and then you end up there and find out I don't really fit here, and so I think it's also like, don't paint that perfect little box this early in your career. Keep it wide open, and keep those possibilities pretty broad, because you never know where you could end up.
That's good. You made me think of another question, but I'll open it up to some students here so that they can ask some questions, give them the opportunity at least for a few minutes here. And then if nobody has anything immediately or can't think of anything, I'll ask some more questions. But I'm going to take a second to kind of see if anyone has any specific questions for our panel. There's a lot of students I recognize here, and a few on the pictures that I've seen before. So opportunity.
Just give Carrie the hard ones.
You have to be brave and talk to me.
I have a starter question. You were just talking about, actually, Carrie had mentioned finding companies that align with your value system.
Mhm.
And I do hear students talk about a lot of that in counseling appointments. Could you talk a little bit about each of you, Chris and Carrie, your journey, and how do you find that? How did you find the companies that align with your value, and what was your process?
Yeah. So I'd say, and I can start there. So back to Carrie's comment, you don't know until you try. There's differences between being in a family-run business versus a Microsoft mega company versus a privately held REI company. And so you never really know which ones you want or what really fits until you do it. But in my opinion, I would say, what are things that you enjoy? Do you enjoy playing basketball every Wednesday and Friday? Nike has hundreds of job postings. Do you enjoy yoga? I mean, Lululemon's the spot. So I kind of look at it as, if you look in the Seattle area, do you love coffee? Do you love the travel industry? Right? I mean, there's so many different ways you can go. Because what happens is when days become hard at work, your corporate environment has things that are set up for you, right? And so usually what your company supports is in the environment. And so even though you may have hard days at work, if your company provides you the opportunities and the things that you enjoy as a person, chances are those rough patches are easier to get through. So I would just say, if you're starting, what are the things that you enjoy doing? What would be the things that you enjoy having discounts on? What are those things that you would want perks on and participate? And if you were to talk to your friends saying, I work here and I put my hands on this to build it. Just kind of, what out of college, out of school, out of work makes you excited. And those are the places to start looking, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's two different angles you can take it. One is like, what are you passionate about? And that's kind of how I ended up in retail. Like, I won't lie, like I love shopping, and so, I started at an insurance company and I would not trade that experience that I got for the world, because I would say like a huge percentage of what I've learned in technology, I learned at Safeco. They had a really great onboarding and training program for entry-level technology associates. And so I'm so grateful for that experience. But over time, like my passion for like insurance was kind of fizzling. You can only get so excited about like a car adjustment claim. But then I went to work for, my first retail tech role was at Starbucks. And all of a sudden I'm like behind the scenes I'm like at the mothership of like the company that I'd been like living on as a new mom and drinking coffee every day. And getting to see the behind the scenes for a company that I love and that I shopped from on a daily basis. All of a sudden I could like make these connections of like, I'm doing the work that I'm doing. I could see how it applied in a way that was fun for me. And so there is a passion piece that I think goes, you're like, what are you passionate about? And, you know, you can, if you're passionate about healthcare, you're passionate about education or fitness, or, you know, like there's just, I think it's, you know, thinking about those things, and then where are companies that fall into that. You can do like a Venn diagram of like that fall into that circle. And then there's also like, what are the company's values? And if there's any year that has brought out to and made that visible, it's this year. And just looking at how companies are responding to what the world is going through this year, both COVID and other crises that we're going through, civil unrest, et cetera. Seeing, you can very visibly see how companies are responding to those issues, and seeing if those feel right. How do they feel for you personally in your own values, and do they align, and do you feel, you know, inspired by how a company's responding to what we're going through? Because at the end of the day, you want to be proud to work for the employer that you're working for. When we run into somebody on the street or at a party and they say, what do? You want to feel proud to say, I work for so-and-so, or I do so-and-so, and not feel like you kind of have to beat around the bush a little bit because, you know, maybe you're working for somebody that has values that are in conflict with your own. So I think this all just boils down to like, do your homework, you know, get to know a little bit more about the company before you assume that that's where you want to be just because of their name. And there's a lot of amazing places to work. And I will also say that as you navigate your career, you'll start to learn like whether you're a small company kind of person or a big company kind of person or somewhere in between. I'm kind of an in between. Like, I like to be able to be in an organization where I can navigate through and create really meaningful relationships. Like I would even, I think, enjoy working at a much smaller company because I really thrive on the relationship building. And I feel once I get in these larger companies, like a Starbucks size company, that I start to get a little lost and I have a hard time navigating and I have a hard time establishing myself. So I've kind of learned that like those size companies aren't really for me, but I had to go try it in order to figure that out.
Oh, that's good. My gosh. Yeah. Like that culture fit is so huge that we don't always think about, and it may not always match up with the company that we idealize in our mind, right? When we're thinking like, oh, I really want to work for Facebook or whatever company it is. And then later we get there and we find out, oh, this wasn't exactly, for whatever reason, this wasn't exactly like you said, what I thought it was going to be. And so, but having those experiences to try the different size of companies and different cultures really helps us figure out what we do know, like, because without that, we may not know. And so I think that's super important. And Carrie, you said something that I want to ask about, if that's okay. Like this was a while ago, but you brought up on one of our advisory calls about how, and you kind of alluded to this just a minute ago, about the pandemic has changed the dynamic of the commute workforce. And I think this is such a profound thing that I've been trying to help my students understand too, because a lot of my students live down in like Pierce County, for example, and they were used to sort of, it wasn't discrimination, but we knew that, you know, you're not going to commute 2 hours one way to Bellevue very
Right.
easily. Right. And so I always would get this question, well, what kind of job, you know, what if I want to work for a Microsoft, but I don't live in the area? So what am I supposed to do? And I think the pandemic sort of like equalized a lot of that. And you alluded to this once on a call that we had, I remember. And so I want to ask kind of if you could elaborate, and maybe Chris,
Yeah.
share your perspective too on
Yeah.
how things are changing out there with the commute workforce being sort of remote now. Everybody's at the same
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. I think you're starting to see, I mean, some company, we're not quite there yet at Lululemon, but you're seeing a lot of companies starting to announce work from anywhere. Um, and really allowing employees to be in choice about where they live and not requiring them to come into a physical office if they don't want or need to, as long as you can effectively do your job, which most tech roles you can remotely. You can do that from home. And I think a lot of employers before the pandemic hit were, weren't quite there, hadn't quite gotten fully over and figured out that this model works. But when the pandemic forced it, all of a sudden they're seeing like productivity is just as high, if not higher, with our entire workforce from home because we've now eliminated commute time. And everybody's, we're trusting everybody to do their work and get their work done, and they're thriving. So I think it's really caused employers to pause and rethink their office strategy. And for some, they'll still continue to, we're going to still continue to have an office presence, but does that mean everybody comes in 5 days a week? Probably not. We're still working through that. And there's some that are moving away from full offices entirely and moving to a fully remote workforce. So I think what that means is your possibilities as somebody that's job searching, your like potential employers just like expanded immensely, because you're no longer, if you're in Pierce County, you're no longer looking at like who's in Tacoma that might be hiring. Now you can say, where the ocean is mine, like where do I want to work? So I think there's a lot of possibility there that wasn't there before this pandemic, that is going to open up a lot of opportunities that weren't there before, that were constrained by location.
Yeah, I think for me, it's what I find the most interesting is it's asking where you could live was not a standard conversation. And now it's a conversation you can have with any company, and it's not considered a negative conversation. I know people who got jobs in Visa who are headquartered in San Francisco. And do they want to move from Phoenix to San Francisco, right? Where the cost of living is so much higher, and they can say, you know what, can I just stay here? And the answer is yes. But what I've seen was interesting is there's also a balance to it, because there's some people who don't want to be at home and work. They need to go to the office. And so as much as Microsoft is saying, yep, you can work from home as much as you want. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. 50% or less. And then if it's more than that, when we go back to the office, then it's a conversation. They're opening up the campuses now to saying, hey, if you need to come to the office, you can. Here are the things that you have to do to make sure that everyone's safe. But if you need to do that, you can. And some people are taking advantage of that as well, right? Depending on what your situation is at home, kids, learning, whatever it is. And so I'm just seeing a lot more conversation around just flexibility, and it being just a standard conversation now going forward. Because if you look at Microsoft, many times engineers go to their office and close the door anyway, and work there all day and then show you something when they're done. So yeah, I think it's just brought balance. So from looking for a job perspective, you can really open up your search. I would say time zones are a consideration. When you're on the West Coast and you look at jobs on the East Coast, you will be taking calls at 5 a.m., right? But you also be getting done at 2 p.m. So I think the good thing with that is it's just giving people a lot more flexibility to where they can have the conversation where before maybe they shied away from it.
Wow, that's good insights from both of you. Thank you. I do want to pause and give students an opportunity again to ask some questions. I see a few people on here that I know personally, and we'll make sure that we're handling the student questions here if they come.
And if not, I'll ask Carrie a question.
Oh no, you're not allowed to ask.
Carrie, why do you enjoy retail versus all the technology fields you could work in? Why do you enjoy retail?
I really do like shopping. I'm not lying there. I really do. And like the companies I have worked for are like some of my very favorite companies that I shop at. So REI, I love REI, I love Nordstrom, love Lululemon. And so for me, it's like it's getting to go work somewhere that I already love, and that, obviously the discounts are a perk. And it's just something I can relate to, and I can understand it, and I know how to make things, but like I know there's things that I can improve upon. And a lot of my career recently has been more about the relationships that I've formed with leaders and kind of following them in their journey. So I think that's other paths that you start to take later in your life, is the network that you form and the relationships that you create start to open up new opportunities for you. And you'll discover, leaders that you want to work for or that you want to learn from. And would be willing to work for them wherever they are. And so that's how I ended up at Lululemon. I was perfectly happy at REI. I love REI. I would recommend REI to anyone and would go back there in a heartbeat. But I got an opportunity to work for the CTO at Lululemon, and it was, she's somebody that I admire greatly and is a mentor for me. And so it was an opportunity I couldn't turn down. And I think those are things that will happen as you build your career and start creating your own network. And I could talk forever about networking and mentoring and, building those relationships and how valuable that is over time. But that's probably another panel for another time. But why do you like retail, Chris?
I like it because when I look at technology, the cool thing about retail is it's one of the things that your family and friends experience.
Mhm.
If you look at, and keep in mind, the work I'm about to talk about powers pretty much everything. But if you look at infrastructure work or things like that, there's just something special about retail to where when you tell someone where you work, they go, "Oh yeah, no, I went there last week," or "That's my mom's favorite store."
Yeah.
There's just people already have stories with where you work, and I mean, not that that matters, but it's just something that Carrie and I were able to work on launching Nordstrom in Canada.
Mhm.
And being able to, when someone says, "Oh, what do you work on?" you could just point to the news and say, "Oh, we worked on that." And the response is, "Oh, that's really cool," versus, "Oh, can you explain that again? Is that like cell phone stuff?" Or,
Yeah.
so I think the thing with retail is it's something that you can see, it's something you can walk into, it's something that you can communicate what it is. And when you look at other roles or interview with other companies, they also know what you're talking about, right? It's not really retail, but if you look in the Seattle area, Alaska Airlines, yeah, people know what that is.
Yeah.
Costco, Starbucks, right? You don't have to explain what those things are when you're talking about where you work.
Yeah, it's very tangible because everybody buys stuff.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's very relatable, and I think it's really easy. Like I said, it's really easy to get in and start like getting up to speed quickly, because you understand you kind of understand the life cycle within retail.
Yeah.
You
And
understand
yeah.
they have to get created, and they have to get shipped, and they have to get marketed. I mean, I think people understand the basics, and so I think it's an area where you can quickly come in and start.
Yeah. Because it's transferable, right? Because if you think about anything, and I mean, the retail is a transaction of buying goods or services.
Mhm.
Look at Uber, for example, right? Are you buying a T-shirt or a canoe? No. But are you going onto a phone and processing a payment? Yes. Well, guess what? Where that happens, retail, right? So that's kind of what's cool about it, is you're not just stuck selling things. You can look at payment processes, customer analytics, website development. I mean, pretty much anything. and you can, apply it to whatever you want to do.
Mhm.
They're good points. I remember selling enterprise software, and people like in my family like, "What is that?" Like,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there's something to be said for that brand recognition, that awareness of brand. And on that note, so the roles that you guys have had, I'm sure like the role that you're in now wasn't the only role that you've
Yeah.
ever done in retail or in the company that you're with now or whatever. What are some roles, or what are some areas that students could be successful in, like in a retail career? What would some of those
Mhm.
things maybe be that they should be aware of?
I can start. I mean that a large percentage of my career has been spent in business analysis. I started out as a programmer and I lasted about 7 months before my manager was like, how about business analysis? It seems like you need to get out and like talk to people. um, so thankfully to her, she quickly pivoted me into a role as a business analyst and learned a lot. And I think for me, business analysis is like the perfect blend of business. It's that hybrid between business and technology where you're really getting to work directly with different aspects of the business and understand the business problems that they're trying to solve. And then bringing those back to the technology teams and working with them to come up with the best solution. And so for me, it was ideal because I wasn't like as technical as some of my peers. And while I could code and I was a programmer, I enjoyed kind of the business problem solving aspects more. And so I spent a good portion of my role in multiple companies as a business analyst. And my favorite was doing business analysis for the marketing organization at REI. And that's where I really like learned the ins and outs of retail and all those marketing strategies that work so well on me. And then when I went to Nordstrom is when I stepped into management for the first time and kind of took a leap there where I hadn't managed other people at that point in time, and quickly discovered that I loved it, and have been in leadership roles ever since, and have over the last couple of years have pivoted into this kind of business operations role, which is so there's kind of in a technology role, there's kind of like the delivery side of things where you're working on projects and you're implementing technology and you're implementing new solutions. And then there's kind of the operations side of things and really like keeping things the day-to-day running. And I'm on the business operations side of those things. So I really oversee like the business of technology. So our financials, I'm in charge of our entire budget. I'm in charge of like employee communications and workforce design. And, as we expand and grow our team, what's our workforce strategy? And so I kind of get to do I get to do kind of the business aspect of technology in a different way. But that's really where I thrive, is in that kind of middle ground between business and technology.
Yeah, for me, so fully aligned with Carrie on business analysis. If you look at job postings, business analyst, product owner, things like that. But for me, I actually started in production support, so a little more in operations. And the great thing about that, what I tell people is, I probably learned the most about retail in those 2 to 3 years being in operations, because you're in a role where you have to understand how everything's connected, and there's no way to learn it like actually doing it. And so when you look at beginner roles, looking at things that they may seem operational, right? I'll take finance for example. Working in technology, supporting a system that closes the month, closes the quarter, and closes the year might sound a little bit mundane, but you're going to make the most connections probably with the most amount of people doing something like that. And so for me, that role in production support, which isn't super glamorous, really enabled me to learn. And then back to Carrie's example of the couple sides of technology, I've always bounced between what's known as the delivery side and the product side or the strategic side. And similar to what Carrie's also said before, is you don't know until you try. In the Nordstrom area, I was more focused on the delivery. Moving to REI, more focused on the strategic portion. And I knew that, you know what, actually, I want to get back into more of that delivery side. So that's where I'm at with Microsoft now. But yeah, I would say kind of in terms of roles that are starting, you know, regardless of the title, like I said before, it's how can you be in those roles where you'll learn as much as possible, because that's how you'll know what you like and don't like, and then from there you can make your decisions of what you want to do. And even though it feels like you're making all the wrong decisions when you're 24 or 25, that's the time to make them, because there's a lot of time in your career and there's no better way than just to try it. So
Yeah, I think any titles that if you look for titles that have like the word associate in them,
Yeah.
or production support analyst, or like a IT operations analyst or support analyst, or any of those will kind of trigger more entry level roles. I think business analyst roles are also like ideal for coming right out of college. So those are kind of all good for things to search for in terms of titles.
And then years of experience, another one to add to is, if a posting has experience required 2 years or less,
Yeah.
something like that. I mean, that is an entry level role, regardless of, in my opinion, what the title says.
Yeah.
So there's also, you could look at that too as a balance to see what would be a good fit for the first one.
So those 2 years of experience might be a combination of some work, but also could be classes taken in cyber or whatever potentially.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'll tie it back to, every once in a while someone asks me, they say, oh, do I need the big internship, right? What you need is the experience. Now, whatever you call it, right, is one thing, but really there it's how can you portray work that you've done in school, classwork, even volunteer work is another big one, I'd say. How can you just correlate the experience that you have, because resume isn't just where you went to school, because you'll find out that when you're in year 2 or 3 of college, you're working with people who went to Duke and Harvard and that type of stuff, and guess what, you guys have the same job. So really it comes down to how that, to your point, though, 2 years of experience, how can you market yourself to say, this is what I've done, this is how I've made an impact, and this is how I can make an impact for you.
And I'll also say that 2 years of experience is likely not a hard and fast requirement. Those are just, parameters that are set. But, if you see a job posting and you're like, I think I would be great for this, but I don't have 2 years of experience, you should still apply. Nobody has every single thing check that is in a job description that somebody's looking for. Job descriptions are used to find folks that generically fit within kind of what you're looking for, and then where they'll really kind of suss out what their ideal person is in the conversations and interviews. So I wouldn't think, don't get hung up on certain criteria in a job description, and don't let that deter you from applying. Looks like we're getting questions.
Yes. Go ahead. And I want to be sensitive to time, as I know we're at 5, but you guys are okay to keep going for.
I'm okay.
Okay.
Like
so
I said before, COVID, I got nothing going on.
Awesome. We
Wide
need.
open.
So Luther asked an interesting question. He says, if you're presented with multiple job offers besides company values, location, salary, what would be the deciding factor for the job that you would want to take? Thoughts?
Let me see here.
Well, I mean, benefits should be, when you talk about salary, I mean, really, really look hard at like the total compensation package. So understanding, what is total potential compensation, like with bonus, and inequity if there is some, but also really getting clear on what are their benefits. Some companies really show up well, like Microsoft. They are like world renowned for their benefits package is hard to beat. And for somebody with a family, having the benefits that Microsoft provides is almost more valuable than the salaries that they pay. So really understanding their full benefits package and also comparing that to like, what do you need as either an individual or a family? And then values, location, and salary. And then I think it's really about the opportunity and the experience. Like Chris was talking about the experience, like which company do you really feel like is going to give you experience that's going to both, my boss talks a lot about like she starts to look around when she starts getting bored. So it's really important to keep her like interested, and she really like needs a challenge. So which company is going to keep you challenged and keep you interested, and where you feel like you're going to get opportunities that are going to keep you engaged.
Yeah, I'd say to add on to that, salary has a very short runway, because after about 4 to 6 months of whatever you're making, it feels the same. And so I really look at it as when you interview a company, you also should be taking note of what your experience is like.
Mm-hmm.
You will spend more time at work than you will with your family and your friends and your significant other. And it's pretty interesting how when you're talking to someone in a job interview, do they come to the job interview tired?
Mm-hmm.
Are they excited to talk to you? Right? I mean, if you have a company who's excited to talk to you and they want to hire you, but they're going to pay you, I'll make up a number, $10,000 less than this one that's like, oh yeah, no, please, great, yeah, no, come on, but I got to go, I have another meeting in 5 minutes. The company that wants you is going to invest in you, and you want to be at a place that invests in you, especially when you're early on in your career. That's why when people ask me, they say, oh, I could take this contractor role for a little bit more money, or I could take this entry level role that's an FTE. Take the FTE every time. You really just want to be at a place where they'll invest in you. And kind of back to Carrie's point, right? Ask those questions. Okay, how can you invest in further education, right? You look at Boeing, they'll pay to help you get a master's, right? And just kind of what are those things that you find important, and ask the company how they'll support you in that. Because like I said, I mean, salary is a component of it, but that's it. It's great the first couple times, then after that it all starts to feel the same. So I'll just really focus on who's willing to invest in you, because that's how you grow your career. If you're at a company where they won't, then that's where you'll kind of stay in the same spot unless you even try harder than at other places. So
Yeah, it's a good point. And really, really look at your interviews as, they're interviewing you, but just as much you are interviewing them. And so make sure you're getting your questions answered, and you're coming away with a clear understanding, and that they're giving you the time and the information that you need to make an informed decision. Which goes to Rachel's question about the red flags, which is exactly what I was going to talk about with red flags. Is in those interviews, like my husband interviewed with a company not that long ago, and they offered him the role, but like his interview experience was so poor, and the people that he spoke with seemed so disengaged, and even to the point where he came home and he's like, I don't think they really like working there. And they offered him the role and he said, no, thank you. And so I think that's a red flag is, when you interview for a company, the people you're interviewing with should come across as being very passionate about the company and speak very highly of it and be able to answer your questions, and want to take the time to look you in the eye and have a face-to-face conversation with you. If they aren't, that's a red flag, big time.
Yeah, and I'd say another red flag is, do they have to convince you to work there? That's a red flag. I had an interview experience once where it was an opportunity to move to a city that I've always wanted to move to. And the question that was asked of me was, what do I think of family? And I said, why? And their question was, oh, because people your age just work all the time and don't care about a family, which is like, okay, that's weird. And so there's times where, like, when you're talking to companies, you can get a sense of, thanks, but no thanks. And it is important to call out. I think the more experience you get, the easier it is to be a little bit more choosy. But yeah, like I said, I mean, you get a sense of it, and hours are important, right? Are you okay? Sometimes some companies say, nope, you log in at 8 and you work till 5. No questions asked. Is that another thing? So for me, that would be a red flag, because I support flexibility and appreciate it. So yeah, I would just, once again, just say the attitude of the people you're talking to.
Wow, good questions. Here's one from Richard that says, is there a way to talk to people in the workplace with the staff working from home? Informational interview, networking on LinkedIn, like what type of media or format are you guys, utilizing with now remote workforce where everybody's seemingly disconnected, but we're trying to connect through technology? How does that work?
I'm on Zoom. I am in this environment all day. I use Zoom and Team. We also use Microsoft Teams for kind of internal team collaboration. But yeah, I mean, I've hired a person on my team that I've never met in person for the first time ever. And, so we've had to learn how to get past some of that. It's easy to say, well, we should just pause until we can be back together and do face to face. But we probably did that for a little while, and then we're like, we need to move forward. We've got work to do. And so once we kind of got past that and realized we can do this and we can get creative and we can get innovative, obviously we would prefer to be in person, and we prefer to be able to shake someone's hand when we meet them and take them around our office and show them around. At the end of the day, we can still have a face-to-face conversation over Zoom or Teams or all these other technologies, wonder of technology, and get a good sense for how somebody's going to be an add to your team. We've stopped internally at Lululemon. We've stopped using the term culture fit, and we're moving towards culture add, because we think, we should be looking at people that are going to continue to kind of broaden our views instead of keeping them to the current views that we have. I think we're adopting and talking to people over Zoom. This is how we do it, and we've gotten quite good at it.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. And then in terms of, the informational interviews on LinkedIn, I'd say that's the one thing probably that hasn't changed with COVID, is because when you apply to a job, what's the first thing that's going to happen is a phone screen.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about, seeing that you're connected with someone on LinkedIn through a second connection, or your parents' friends, or, if I looked at LinkedIn, I saw Carrie knew someone who worked at a company I wanted to work at.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you apply to a job, you're going to have a 5-minute impression period that is 99% of the time going to be over the phone anyway. So I'd say now, in terms of, how do you have those informational interviews, just start to have that practice to reach out to say, here's my name, here's what I've done, here's why I'm interested. I'd love to talk to you. And now, whether that's over LinkedIn, Zoom, Teams, walking down the street 6 feet apart, whatever that is, I would say that's something that you're going to want to get good at, because as you start your career search, the one thing that's going to happen is a recruiter is going to send a message on LinkedIn saying, hey, saw your experience, would love to talk to you, or hey, saw you're a recent graduate, would love to talk to you. And you're gonna just have to get really good at that 3 to 5 minute, here, here I am, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, and this is how I can help. So I don't think that part's changed too much, but yeah, it's kind of weird to not see people face to face. We're making the joke it's the worst high school reunion of all time.
Yeah.
Where it's like all of a sudden one day we're just gonna see people for the first time, and
Yeah.
we don't know how long. But yeah, so I'd say it's just important to keep the connection going for sure.
Yeah, and I would say what a skill that you need to perhaps work on is being comfortable being on video. Yep. and speaking into a screen. It's not comfortable for everyone. And I mean, I have a teenage daughter and she's like, I hate it. And I always turn my camera off. And I'm like, you're gonna have to get comfortable with this because we don't know how long this is going to continue. And I think for a good many employers, even once we are able to go back into the office, we're still gonna have some element of this working from home and having all our portions of our team on Zoom or on, online. And it's so important to be able to see each other and to be able to see how people are responding to whatever we're conveying. And, are people getting it? Are they disagreeing with me? Those visual cues are so important in good communication. And so getting comfortable being on a screen is really important right now. And finding a place in wherever you are living where you feel comfortable doing that with a background you feel comfortable with, like think through all of that, like where would I want to take my calls, where I would feel comfortable and I wouldn't be interrupted. And those are all new dynamics that we have to think through.
Yeah, thinking about elevator pitches, what you guys just talked about. I'm thinking about recording videos and backgrounds, things that I know, like Meryl's in my class right now, and we've been doing these assignments every week. We do this stuff, and Bob's nodding. I know we've been teaching this stuff for a long time, and now it's like even more so relevant, or as relevant, or more than it's ever been. And it's good to hear you guys say that, because I think sometimes we question, like, are we teaching the right things? But good communication is critical for any success in business and in life. So
yeah, it's definitely harder because I'd say a year ago, because so much of in the workplace is also personal relationships. I don't want to say it was easier back then, but a year ago you could say, hey, you know what, let's just not talk about work. Let's just go grab a beer somewhere, and then we can talk about work tomorrow. And whatever you need to get done, would sometimes get done faster if you have that personal connection. Mm-hmm. And so now it's, how do you build that over this is important.
That's great.
Yeah, we do a lot of just like, we try to do some, still try to incorporate some of those fun things throughout the week that kind of take the place of the passing each other in the halls or seeing each other in the lunchrooms. Like, we'll get online and like drink our coffee together and just chat, not about work. We'll have some connects after work from time to time over Zoom and just chat and still try to have that personal connection, even though we're not with each other physically in the office, because we know that everybody's fatigued and they're online all day long and they're in meetings, but they're also, like Chris said, like, we spend more time with these people than anybody else. And like, when you just cut off that kind of personal component, things start to go awry and people start like bumping heads and stuff. So like, it's really important that we continue the connection piece. So my team, I have a whole program manager on my team that's focused entirely on people related programs. And she's had to pivot her role a ton this year into like thinking of creative ways of how we can build connection in the team and doing things virtually that we haven't done before, so that we can keep, working as one team.
I want to be respectful of your time. Is there any last questions that students just burning to get answered? They can maybe.
I had a couple questions. As far as I'm in an interesting spot, I suppose. I'm at an okay job as in a management role for a logistics company, and I'm finding there is like the entry level jobs that are available is a significant decrease in salary. Whereas the other ones where it says entry level and then it says required experience 4 years, I'm like, okay. But I guess some of the job titles you guys were listing off earlier was pretty useful because I seem to be able to only find like information technology specialist or kind of like the generic titles, and some of those are even pretty the qualifications are a little high. I'm familiar with most of the things that they list, but I'm not like super good at any of it yet. But yeah, like production support analyst or business analyst were not things that I was looking at all. I don't know if you have any other suggestions that I might jot down.
I'd say so what's interesting and I'll say cool about technology is I'm always surprised, and it also makes me smile to where you listen to Carrie and she talks about how she loves being a people manager, right? Other places, maybe if you want an increase in pay, you have to be a people manager and you have to be a director and you have to be all these things. I'll take Microsoft, for example. We have a individual contributor with the level of fellow, and only certain people have it and you have to get approved to get it, but they don't manage people. And their compensation is, comparable to very senior level executives who manage thousands of people. So when you look at kind of what titles are there, I would say product manager, program manager, they have, and I'll just say Microsoft, program manager has level 1, 2, 3, senior, and then there's 2 levels in senior, and then there's 2 levels in principal, and then there's like 5 other on top of that. So I would say even actually business analysts, there's gonna be a 1, 2 senior lead. And so I would really look at product manager, product owner, program manager, or business analyst, and then just look down at kind of what we talked about, those years of experience. And that's going to give you a good barometer of what level am I going at, because even though there's the word management, many times in technology, it doesn't mean you're managing people. You're just managing a set of deliverables.
Yeah, and usually in the job description, it'll say if you're managing people or not.
Yeah, and then in terms of, I'd say another thing to look at is many times look at the division it's in. There's a difference in roles between an engineering division versus a marketing division versus a finance division. And so, also look at that and say, is this a entry level role in an engineering organization, or is it an entry level role in a operations division? Because even those could be different levels of compensation, I would say. So.
So why don't we end it on that question? But Chris and Carrie, is there any like last sentences of advice that you can think of that you wanted to fit in just to kind of wrap it up, or?
Yeah, I can go first. I think first I want to say thanks everyone for taking the time to listen to Carrie and I talk to each other and to you for an hour. I think, in terms of, career development and things like that, I'd say now more than ever is not a time where you can't get a job. You just have to be inventive of how you do it. I use the terminology of being selfish with your connections. If you see someone who works somewhere and they know someone else, talk to them. 99% of the time, you should be applying to a organization with a referral. It increases your chances so much higher, and the want to for someone to help you, especially out of college, is pretty high. And so, if you think, I say referrals are free. If you have that informational and you say, hey, I really want to hear, Carrie, what it's like to work at Lululemon. Can I spare 15 minutes? And if you're on point for those 15 minutes and Carrie walks away impressed, chances are Carrie would give you the referral link, right? So I'll just say, just be selfish. And if there's a level of doubt of, oh, I don't know if I want to reach out to this person, or I feel uncomfortable. Carrie and I do that in our career today. So it's something that never changes in terms of leveraging your connections, and just be selfish and do it. And the worst thing that can happen is someone that says, I'm busy. I don't know if I can. But that, I'd say, would be my little piece of advice to close out me talking for a while. So Carrie, to you.
Yeah, I'll just touch really briefly. I think the main thing I just want to say to everybody is to just continue to try to be, as positive as we can be through all that we're going through. And I know this is probably a difficult time to be in college and looking and forward and career and what's next. But I think there's the best thing to do is to look at the opportunity, and the opportunity is great. Like, our world needs all of you to change, and that's where you guys come in. And so I think being able to look, and it's hard, like it's hard for me on a regular basis, like how do I remain optimistic, and I won't begin to pretend like I'm optimistic every day, but I think if you can try to look at things through that, try to see the positive in things, and seek out ways that you can create opportunities out of things that are happening in the world, and like, how can I make an impact? I think it's like, look at what's going on in the world around you and start to ask how you fit in and how you can make an impact, or where do you want to make an impact. Now's the time. I think I'm excited for all of you, and I just appreciate you all taking the time, and it's been fun to chat, and happy to do it anytime.
I almost wish I could just end the recording there, because that was really inspiring and really positive, and I just think we need that right now. So
we all need a little dose of positivity right now.
Absolutely. And I just want to say thank you to both of you. Carrie Larson, Chris Benz, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And Chris is saying, oh, just, be selfish and whatever. Well, thankfully that you guys are so not selfish, and, giving your time and energy to the ITAM advisory committee, and, just letting us all know what's going out there in the industry and giving your advice to students. So thank you so much for your time.
Happy to.
Yeah, for sure.
And we'll have a recording available, right? Oh.
Yep.
What's that?
I was just going to ask, so the recording will be available to folks that within a little while, a day or two?
That was my next point. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Luke. You're such a quick one. So yes, I recorded this. I will post it on the CW Career Services website under workshops. It'll have the link probably by tomorrow afternoon. And if not, then the day after. I also will send the link out to the instructors. I'll send it out to, various people. So make sure that everybody just has it in their email. So, so for some reason, if you're a student and you didn't get, you're trying to find the link, feel free to reach out to me. Please find me and say, hey, send me that link, and I'll just send it to you personally. So great. So I think that's everything. Thank you to all. Is there any last minute things you wanted to say, Luke, or was there?
Just put on there that it's okay to contact you on LinkedIn. Is that okay for Carrie? If students wish to connect with you, they could try to do that through LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great way to connect and just expand your network like we were talking about. Thanks to you both and to everybody. This was